Okay, we'll bring the January 26th, 2026 council work meeting to order. Item 1.
Mr. Mayor, we've got the wonderful Miss Carey with us here this evening to talk about election planning for 2026 and beyond.
Good evening. As you're well aware, 2026 is going to be another election year. Luckily, this year we do not have a presidential primary, otherwise we would already have that underway. For this year, since it's midterms, we will have the primary election on August 11th and the general election on November 3rd. We did increase the elections budget for this year, even though there is not a presidential primary, simply so that we can increase the pay rate for our election judges. After a comparison study with other municipalities in Anoka County, we were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, for pay rate wise, and so we did up that for this year. Looking forward, since we have a lot of new housing coming in, and which will increase our number of residents and our number of voters. Right now, we have 3 precincts, and all 3 of our precincts are well over 2,000 registered voters in each precinct. By comparison with other precincts in other municipalities for Anoka County, we're stretching it. Most of the time, they try to keep the number of registered voters under 2,000 for a precinct, and as I stated, we're well over 2,000 for all 3 of our precincts. So we've toyed with the idea before of creating a 4th precinct within East Bethel. But that's not anything that staff wants to really do without hearing from you guys first. The thought right now is we would plan ahead for 2028 and possibly have a 4th polling place and 4th precinct for the 2028 elections. That would hopefully accommodate the impending population increase. There are logistics that we would have to figure out in advance, which is why I'm planning that far ahead. If we are looking at making this change for 2028, I would like to be able to have our ducks in a row so that when this year's elections come around, we can let voters know that, hey, this is your polling place this year, but at the next election, you could have a change. So then it's not quite such a shock, and we don't have quite so much confusion if there is a polling place change for some of our residents. With the state statute and regulations that we have to have for polling places falling within a precinct, we do have a limited number of resources as far as buildings go and what we can use as a polling place. According to state statute, the building that we use for a polling place has to fall within 1 mile of the boundary of that precinct. Because we only have so many buildings that can accommodate that many people, that much parking, the amount of space required to fill ADA requirements, we have, like I said, limited number of buildings that would be useful for a 4th polling place. I have kind of poked around, and the Living Hope Church, which used to be St. Andrew's Church up at the corner of 237th and 65, Living Hope Church has indicated that they would be interested in possibly serving as a 4th polling place for us. Granted, we would have to work out, an agreement for them to use them as a polling place, and they would want to run it past their church elders and stuff first. So there's, some behind the scenes work that would have to be done. But they have indicated, I spoke with their pastor, and he said they have talked about it briefly previously, and he said they would be interested in possibly serving that capacity for us. Planning ahead, like I said, that would be beneficial so that we could let voters know this election year that, hey, this change is coming. However, then with 2030 being hot on the heels of 2028, we have the census, and that means redistricting is right around the corner from that. So redistricting would happen in 2031, which is only 3 years after our potential 4th precinct creation. So it would, I'm kind of wanting to test the waters, see what your guys' opinion is as far as, do we want to move ahead and see about this 4th precinct idea for 2028, or would we want to hold off and wait until after the census and see what we're dealing with? That's my question to you guys.
I think it's a good idea to plan ahead because we're definitely, our residents are gonna be increasing with the development and stuff we have. And I think the church idea is great, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think getting it started sooner than later, because even there's always a possibility that obstacles are going to pop up. I've never seen a plan go through without an obstacle.
Right.
That it could even delay it to 2031, and at least we're having a few steps ahead. So I have no problem with going forward with it. I know it can get really busy in these places because I have judged before, and yeah, so by all means.
Creating a 4th precinct, I mean, it would increase the election budget again because that's an entire additional set of election judges that we would have to add.
Right.
But it's also, that's less voters that are showing up at a specific precinct, so it's not going to burn out our judges.
What is your estimate of the budget change just this year with the pay increase?
From 2024 to this year, because since in odd years we don't have an election,
Right.
We increased it from 15,000 to 20,000 just for,
5,000.
yeah, to cover staffing. So, but that also covers, we get a couple judges to come in and assist during the last 2 weeks of absentee voting. In a general election year, the turnout is amazing, but it's inundating. It's really, really hard for staff to get anything done other than elections. And so we had in-house election judge assistants for both the the primary and the general. This year, because it's midterms, usually there's a slightly lower turnout. We would probably just have the in-house assistants for just the general election, just to try and conserve the budget where we can.
Okay.
You know, we talk about conserving the budget. Is this gonna be too much of an overkill? I agree with everything that's being said, don't get me wrong, get ahead of the game and so forth. But are we actually gonna do this, or are we gonna be coming up with a plan to do this?
Right now, we can't put anything into motion yet because we have to deal with the elections that are in front of us.
Right.
But I would want to put that to the elections director at Anoka County so that he knows this is coming down the pipeline.
Right.
And get all of our ducks in a row so that we, like I said, we can get this notice if this is something we are fully intending to do.
Okay.
So that we can get these notices out to the voters.
Okay.
Would you be doing a mass mailing, or would you be just doing postings on the website, social media, word of mouth?
Our flyer.
That would probably, I would probably want to check with the elections director and see what his recommendation is as far as this election year. I wouldn't want it to interfere with this year's elections.
Right.
So as far as this year goes, it would probably just be word of mouth and information posted at the polling places. And then as we actually get closer to the 2028 election year, then it may be mailings. I know that if there's any sort of jurisdictional changes, or if somebody changes address and is assigned to a new polling place, they get a postcard directly from the Anoka County Elections Office. So I imagine that that would probably be involved after we get through the 2026 elections.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the general consensus here is to move forward.
Sure.
Okay,
Sounds good.
that's all I needed.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Next up, item 2.
Mr. Mayor, on the second item here is the needs study that the council had approved a while back here, and wanted to get it in front of the council and kind of present some of the findings thus far. And I think that while this isn't the entire study, it does kind of bring people up to speed on what's being found in terms of space needs and that sort of thing. And then solutions will be coming at a different time. So anyways, I'll turn it over to them.
Do you need to set the mic, or is it fine?
You can use it right at the moment. What's that?
Do you
Can we
need,
talk from here, or do you need to set the mic?
People won't be able to hear you at home.
Have to do this.
So
Just wanna check.
stand at the podium if you want.
good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We are ICS and Wold. We are planning on giving you an update today as far as what we've accomplished so far in the space needs assessment. We've also had some core group meetings where with department heads and staff, we've been gathering information and giving them updates along the way too. Tonight we'd be looking for your direction on next steps. So today's objective is to, it's jumping ahead. We'll review the planning process, the guiding principles, the current facility conditions at each of your locations, and then we'll discuss the assessments that we've done and go over the space program. I'm Kristen, I'm with ICS.
Chris Seamer, ICS. Kevin wasn't able to be here, but he was the one who actually walked a lot of the sites and did the assessment, physical assessment himself.
Hi everyone, I am Melissa Stein with Wold Architects and Engineers. I am here with Joel Dunning and Allison Timmons. We are kind of the, I would say, the Wold team that has been helping with some of the space planning assessments and had all the, I would say, interview meetings with all of your different departments.
And as you may previously be aware, we've worked on many projects together, so this type of assessment is not new to us. At ICS, we integrate expertise in facility planning and funding and construction. Just a brief overview of what we've done here.
And then Wold Architects and Engineers, we have been, we're a public sector architectural and engineering firm. Like Kristen said, we have partnered with ICS on a number of projects, so we're coming together as a collective team, but we kind of have different assets that we bring to the table to help be here for you guys and help you through this planning process. Wold's been around for 57 years now, kind of working in that public sector realm, working with municipalities just like yourselves on these types of planning efforts. Our process, hopefully you can see this, sorry, it's a little small, but we can always send it out and print it and send it out. But essentially we look at different tasks. We separate the planning process, if you will, into essentially collecting the data. So we start off with a kickoff meeting, really understand the criteria, objectives, we call them guiding principles, and essentially they help guide us through this process on some of those, I would say, overarching principles that we want to try to achieve with this study. From there, we gather data. So Kevin and ICS, they went and toured all of your existing facilities, took a look at the conditions, started looking at life cycles of systems, so mechanical, electrical, technology systems that you guys have, along with the infrastructure exterior of your buildings. And then we looked at, we sent out surveys to your departments, and then also did departmental meetings and interviews. So we sat down with them, talked about their current deficiencies, kind of what growth looked like for them, what are their service models today, what are things as we grow and we plan for the future, what are things that maybe we as, you know, at the city of East Bethel can't do today that we want to accomplish, and make sure that we're thinking that long term along with taking care of what we're doing today too. From there, we are essentially at that middle gold spot, if you will. We have core planning groups, so we have a bunch of stakeholders that we meet with. We talked through all of the needs and the things that came up. That's basically what we will be talking to you today about. And then we're getting agreement on that need. So today we would love to get that feedback from you guys, hear about your thoughts on what we're kind of presenting, and make sure that there's alignment between our staff and the things that we're hearing, our core planning group that we're meeting with, and then obviously our council, which will be you all. And then essentially the maroon and the blue parts, that's what we will be moving into. So those are kind of our next steps as we move forward on this process. So really developing options and solutions, and then coming back to you with kind of some of those findings. Like I said, our first step is really kind of creating that criteria and those guiding principles. And so these, we call them guiding principles because we want them to help essentially guide us through this process. So the first one, develop a 10-year capital improvements plan. We want to establish a prioritized roadmap for facility investments aligned with anticipated service demands and budgetary capacity. Plan for the long-term community growth. Design facility solutions that accommodated projected population growth and service expansions through 2040 and beyond. Ensure fiscal responsibility and efficiency. Balance initial capital investments with life cycle maintenance costs, operation efficiencies, and long-term taxpayer value. Prioritize firefighter health, wellness, and safety. Incorporate modern fire station design standards in addressing occupational health risks, including proper decontamination facilities, exhaust capture systems, and adequate rest amenities. Deliver functional and operational efficient solutions, so optimize staff workflows, enhance interdepartmental coordination, and support effective service deliveries through thoughtful space planning. And last but not least, enhance customer service and accessibility. So creating welcoming and accessible public spaces that improve the citizen interactions and reflect community expectations for responsive municipal operations.
I think Melissa probably already covered it, but the purpose of the study is really just to help you determine what do you do with your facilities and what are next steps and what's the right time to do that. Do we keep the existing facilities or do we consider something new?
So facility assessment and why capital planning is important. The biggest thing here is that you're making the right decisions on the best next steps. And it really breaks down into 3 categories. Managing your budget and schedule improvements effectively. You know what you have, you know how things are the wear and tear on items, so you're effectively able to take care of the assets you have. Prioritizing and deferred maintenance and capital improvements. Within those items, there's always going to be prioritization that takes place, and understanding that a decision here also can potentially mean a decision down the line, but at least understanding those and then align available funding with these improvement needs. It's really just making sure that you're budgeting accordingly and that you're aware. If you're offsetting something, it doesn't necessarily mean it goes away, but it's going to come back at some point to be revisited. And those all can be conscious decisions along the process. Next. So space needs analysis. This is what feeds into that as well, because along with the physical, we need to understand how the spaces are being used. Are they meeting the needs? Are they meeting the equipment needs with the vehicles the city has? Are staff able to effectively do their job and interact with the public in order to do their jobs efficiently as well? So there's 2 aspects of this. There's the fixed planning, and I kind of equate this to what you have, how you're dealing with what you have, and then master planning. Seeing the bigger picture, where you can improve, and how growth starts to tie into some of this as well.
So the buildings that we looked at are City Hall and the Community Center, Fire Station 1, Public Works, Fire Station 2, and Fire Station 3. The following slides will just give you a brief review of what we had found during our site walkthroughs. Various additions throughout, starting in 1979, and then another addition in 98, and then again in 2007, for a total square footage of 13,360. City Hall, looking at a lot of your mechanical and electrical systems, your boilers are 31 years old, your air handling units and water heater are roughly 48 years old. Cooling units are 19 years old and use an old R22 refrigerant, which is fading out. The community center and senior center, the HVAC equipment are also aging, 28 years old for the furnaces. The water heater is 28 years old. Cooling units are 28 years old. And we're finding similar dates with the roofing. 50 years old for the newest section, and the rest is anywhere from roughly 19 to 20 years old. And these are just some pictures, a photo tour of what we just went through. It would be important to note that a lot of the assets here are original, such as the carpet or the VCT flooring, the outdated bathroom or the restroom here, and it's also non-ADA compliant. The roof membrane, it's shrinking and pulling away from the edges, and we have dried out cracking wall joints.
The next facility is Fire Station number 1. This is your newest facility. That being said, it's 19 years old already. Just a little over 11,000 square feet. Here, kind of the same theme continues. It's got, although this one has 3 brand new rooftop units. The furnace serves the northeast rooms is original, the water heater is original, and the apparatus bay radiant heating is original. Interior, the epoxy floor in the hall, there's new epoxy flooring in the hall and apparatus bay, new LVT, and then carpet in the office is original. So there's some acknowledgement that some of the features in this space are being addressed as they age. And then exterior, the roof is original. It's starting to show some signs of leaks. And then again, the caulking and control joints around the windows are starting to crack with their age. Again, these are some of the pictures. Again, there's the radiant heat on the left, the original furnace in the middle, and then the original carpet. Here's examples of the dried out cracking and caulking that's starting to show signs around the building, and then the built up roofing, which obviously has some signs that are showing up above that need some maintenance addressed. Your second newest facility, built in 2004, is Fire Station number 2 with Public Works building. 14,500 square feet there with cold storage of 4,500 square feet. Again, here the furnace, water heater, and Public Works and apparatus bay radiant heat are original. Again, new epoxy flooring here, and the rest of the flooring is concrete, ceramic, and quarry tile is original. Caulking joints, as I mentioned, are showing signs of age. Back of the area, paving is showing some damaged spots, and then the back fence is in poor condition. So here again is an example of the mechanical equipment in the building. And then some of the exterior components, we've got some block that's starting to deteriorate along with some of those caulking joints. The paving, and then that fence that's showing signs of some age. Sure. So last day, Fire Station number 3, built in 1998. Again, this is just an apparatus bay of 1,000 square feet. Water heaters original, apparatus bay unit heaters are original, new epoxy flooring, and then the rest of the flooring, the office carpet and ceramic are original. Original shingled roof, and then the parking and drive paving has damaged spots as well. And again, here's some examples of those items that I just touched on. And then what we're working on right now is taking all this information, and this is an example of the spreadsheet that we'll eventually share that has all the data. The one thing that we haven't worked on a lot with staff is really starting to go in and prioritize what these projects look like, because what that'll start to do is give you a look with each year, 10 years out, 20 years out, what is the investment needed in the existing facilities, just from a facilities aspect. It really doesn't get into the space needs, but this really starts to schedule out when some of those capital improvement projects need to start happening to keep those buildings at operation.
All right, like Chris said, they, looked at the condition assessment, and then that's only part of this master planning effort. And so the other part is actually understanding the utilization and kind of that growth and kind of workload factors is what we call it of your different departments. And so we captured that in a couple different ways. The first was sending out a survey to all of the employees. This was specifically directed to the City Hall and Public Works. We did a separate one for fire just because they do function a little differently, and you do have paid on call, so we wanted to make sure we talked through training and decontamination and those sort of things. So the first couple slides here will specifically be for an overall employee survey for City Hall and Public Works. So the first question was, are there workflow deficiencies driven by the layout of the primary workplace? As you can see, there was only 14 answers, but 9 said yes and 5 said no. Change it. Then we kind of asked them what are, as they ranked kind of their importance of some of the characteristics. So this is if you looked at an ideal workplace, what would be some of the characteristics, that they would think would be important, and ones that they would believe are not very important. So as you get more of the blue, it's characteristics that they think are very important. The orange would be the not important. So as you can see, we kind of ranked them here. The first one would be the priority of size or properly sized workstations. Number 2 is the personnel safety. There was a tie for 3 for environmental comfort. So that's the temperature and the humidity inside the building. So that ties really well into condition assessment and kind of the mechanical systems that we were seeing there. Ergonomics, so that's kind of just their space. How does the comfort of how they're sitting and making sure that they can do the tasks that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. And then adequate storage space. So, equipment, gear, supplies, making sure that they have them in specific spaces and be able to get to them readily available. We also asked what is their satisfaction or overall satisfaction of their workplace and kind of supporting their job, if you will. And so 2.86 was of those 14 people that answered. And as you can see, the next question that we asked was in their perception, taking those characteristics that we asked the first time of an ideal workplace. We asked them, how does their current space kind of align with those characteristics? So 5 all the way on the blue would be that it's far above average. 3 is average, so more in that gray. And then 1, so more of the orange, is the far below average. And as you can see, access to wellness spaces, so fitness, quiet rooms, kind of those rest, de-escalation spaces, was something that the buildings were far, I would say, deficient in, along with the properly sized workspace. With that, we asked for additional, workplace enhancements, support spaces, amenities. So for Public Works, it's a tight work space. If you've ever been in there with all of the equipment parked, there's kind of inches in between each of the vehicles, so it is pretty tight. More storage and more kind of garage doors. They just have the one main garage door right now. Again, I think if they didn't have such tight spaces and vehicles parked in the drive lane, the one garage doors would be just fine. Yeah, a lot of maneuver in the vehicles, yeah. A dedicated wash bay and kind of a separated locker room. Right now, their lockers are in the garage. So again, as we think of decontamination, it's a similar aspect for Public Works as we would think of for kind of fire. So kind of removing those workstation or those lockers out of the garage and having them be in a separate space and just kind of adding that support space for them. City Hall, a fitness area, automatic locking front doors, a break room that they can actually sit in, and then kind of better meeting collaboration spaces. And then there was a note of a dedicated sheriff and fire building. Again, didn't want to modify anybody's notes that they provided, so this is just comments directly from staff. Taking those, we then kind of looked at, like I said, that was our survey. We then met with each of the departments and did essentially what we call a functional assessment. So talking about deficiencies, talking about work load changes, and kind of how they see the future of their department changing. So for City Hall, I won't go through all of this, but really the biggest one would be a larger and more secure election storage. As we just heard, right, you're maybe thinking of adding another precinct, so obviously that's going to add some additional storage. We know that there are increased regulations and rules being put on elections, so just making sure that we're following those. Space for the current staff is adequate right now, but as you grow, there is no room to add that additional capacity for maybe other services. So really, as we think of the long-term build out of your city, you're going to need a city hall that kind of can accommodate that growth to help serve your community. The service counters are adequate size right now. We just probably need to add some better wayfinding, especially for the buildings counter. People just need to go a little further down to see that counter, and people don't always follow signs. Conference rooms, you know, there are times, especially during elections, where conference rooms have to be locked down. So again, if we take care of the secure piece for elections, that might free up some of our conference rooms, where right now there's some tension during times for the lack of conference rooms and meeting rooms throughout. And then really the break room, there is no space for staff, right, to take a break other than at their office or at their workstation. There is no place in the break room to actually sit down. Public Works, like we talked about, that it's very tight for the vehicles. They're strategically fit into place. Equipment, you know, there's equipment being stored outside. So as we think of the asset preservation of the equipment that you guys are purchasing, making sure that it's stored properly. So having the pieces that should be inside, having them inside and not outside during inclement weather. Dedicated wash bay within the garage or somewhere near the garage. Dedicated mechanics area. There's just a lot of pieces that they store. There's computer spaces there, and right now it's all open to the elements. So kind of just creating more of a mechanics space that we can secure some of those parts and pieces, and making sure that again we're maintaining the assets that you guys have invested in. And then kind of looking at some exterior security, the fencing. Chris had mentioned that, and just kind of a better separation for the welding. Right now there's not a dedicated spot for that. Right now it's kind of wherever they can find it, so anybody's weld knows there's sparks, so just making sure there's a dedicated spot with that from a safety perspective. Then we went and kind of surveyed the fire department. Like I said, we met with them, but we also sent a separate survey for them too. So the first one was operational workflow. So we kind of talked about where do they gather for calls. So again, it varies depending on what station they were at. Station 1 would be the apparatus bay or the radio room that's there. Station 2 is the apparatus bay, and Station 3 is in the office that they have in the back. As you can see, a majority of it is that the spaces aren't necessarily adequate for them to be able to muster for calls. When we asked about improvements, so exhaust ventilation for the trucks, so that dedicated capture that we talked about in terms of the decontamination piece. Better technology and alerting systems. Right now there maybe are some AV and cell service issues within the station, so it's dropping calls and dropping radio signal, which is not always great to have. And then we do talk about, comfortable seating and amenities as we look at the service model that you have, and maybe potentially going to a duty crew, making sure that there's a space for your firefighters there when they're not on a call to be able to sit and do trainings and do other things like that they may need to do. And then specifically at Station 2, just kind of adding that report writing space or another space out of the apparatus bay. Right now all they have is that apparatus bay. We also talked about parking. So Station 1 is adequate for parking. 2 is tight, especially when everybody gets called there. There's just not a lot of room, and they want to make sure that as they park, they don't impact public work functions. So it kind of can become congested at times. And then Station 3, for the most part, they're fine, but they also said that if Smokies is full, that sometimes that can impede them responding or getting to the garage to be able to respond to calls. We then talked about the health and wellness of firefighters, and so the first one was, do we have adequate supplies and support spaces for decontamination process? So the answer was no. And then, do you feel that there are adequate facilities for personal decontamination? So for those of you that don't know, decontaminate yourself. So the firefighters would decontaminate their turnout gear and the things they have, but you also have to decontaminate the equipment and the trucks and the pieces of the items that they're using as well. When we talked about improving, right now all of your turnout gear is in the apparatus bay. So kind of having a dedicated space for that, I think along all of your stations is something that we talked about. Having additional extractors are essentially the way that you wash your gear. Right now there's two, so if all of your firefighters are being called out to a structure fire or something like that, the line to clean the equipment and turnout gear can become long. And so just making sure that we're thinking through how also they dry and having adequate space to be able to dry their equipment as well. Exhaust ventilation for the trucks, we talked about that, the dedicated capture. Having space to be able to wash their helmets and their masks and making sure that they can clean them annually. They need to do that if they're not being used. Dedicated locker rooms. There's a desire to have a fitness area. And then currently, Station 1 has the hose tower. That is also where all of your hoses are stored, and the racks are there too. So just kind of talking about how those should maybe be at every station or being able to store at different stations. And then there's dedicated tool, laundry, and SCBA storage essentially on all stations if possible. We also talked about how there might be additional workplace enhancements and support spaces, amenities, if you will. So there was a request for maybe some additional apparatus bay. Again, this is staff request, so a ladder truck and a side-by-side. The side-by-side would help with icy conditions on the lake, and then trails that you have, and just making sure that they can respond to people who maybe are off the road and on those trail spaces in a more timely manner. As we think through the future of your community and thinking again of that service model and potentially going to a full-time or more of a dedicated duty crew, looking at dorm rooms, sleeping spaces, a better day room set up for those crews. We also talked about potentially, since you are paid on call, having a office area, so if someone is working from home or can work remotely, they could do it at the station and be there to respond when needed. And just meeting the NFPA standards for the stations. And then again, depending on what station you're at, Station 2, all they have is an apparatus space, so just kind of separating some of those spaces, and then providing better coverage as the city grows. So again, change of service model, or potentially looking at the coverage and how you can respond to your community as effectively as possible. We took all of that and we kind of translated that into space. And so based off of our years of experience and meeting with your staff, we kind of utilize, this is I would say our space standard. So this was created for you guys specifically, but based off of administrators and the chief office, what we would see as a best practice for standard office sizes, department leads and command offices, having those, and then supervisor offices, same with workstations, and then meeting rooms. So we use this as kind of a general standpoint as we create our program, if you will. So we took every building. As you can see, the middle column, the existing, is what you have today. Open it off a little bit, but it is what you have. Sorry. Oh, did we miss one? Oh, okay. So we took knowing that your need maybe isn't immediate today, we wanted to look at that long-term growth for your city. So we looked at what you have today, that utilization, which is that existing column, and then looked at the short term, the midterm, and the long term. And then we kind of separated it by different spaces. So we looked at the public works office spaces, so that includes locker rooms, offices, amenities, break rooms, that sort of thing. The warm vehicle garage storage, so that one we looked at the number of vehicles that you have today and what's being stored in there. And then again, based off of the public works that we've worked in, looking at what that lane would be, and making sure that we can adequately walk around all of the vehicles. And that's how we get to the square footage for each one of those spaces. We look at the public works vehicle support, so that's gonna be your mechanics, your wash bay, anything that's not a vehicle, if you will. And then since public works is also with fire station number 2, we have the apparatus bay, the fire support, and then we also know you have county functions in there too, so we wanted to make sure that we listed them there. As you can see, we do grow for public works. We really grow in that public works office space. That's really gonna be your locker rooms and some of the break rooms, enlarging that. So as you grow, the support spaces need to grow. And then really in that vehicle storage. So again, it's making sure you have adequate space around the vehicles, the drive lane, and making sure you're providing for, again, like those spaces, the mechanics space and wash bay space. And then as we look at
Can I
that-
interrupt you real quick?
sure.
On the warm vehicle storage, how does it decrease at the 2040? Is that a mistake, or is that, I'm like, how, it just isn't making
Oh.
sense. Goes from 18 to 17 to 18.
I'm gonna go, yeah, I will take a look at that. I'm not sure if that was a typo. It definitely doesn't decrease by 1,000 and then increases again, no. So,
Yeah,
we will take a look at that, thank you.
thanks.
But yeah, we will, so as you can see, we do increase as we go through. Really, we've increased in the vehicles and then those support spaces to help that. Same with the fire. The apparatus bay, we are increasing to make sure that we can provide adequate space around all your vehicles that are currently in that space. And then the fire support, as you can see, it's pretty non-existent right now. There's really just a bathroom there. So as we look at adding gear wash, decontamination, those turnout gears, a separate report writing space to be able to, not always be in the apparatus bay. That's really what's in that fire support. And then as you can see, the deputy office, those don't really increase at all. Those stay the way they are. The only thing that does change is the deputy vehicle storage. As your public works increases, the thought is that eventually they're going to get large enough where they would essentially need the space that the county is using right now to store vehicles in there. So that's what that 780 is, just finding maybe a new spot for those vehicles that are currently stored in public works. As we look at fire station 1, it's a similar thing. We looked at the existing square footage that you have today, so 10,000 square feet is what that current building is today. And then we looked at the short, the mid, and the long term. And really, there isn't a whole lot of increase. The biggest increases are really going to be in that fire office space. So it's going to be updating or increase in kind of that decontamination and that fire support spaces there. Nothing else really changes within those. So again, increasing from 10,000 to 14.8. And then in the long term, we see another increase, and that's really for as your service model changes, you might need dorm rooms and potentially looking at the amenities that would come with living spaces.
It's 2 slides now that the existing numbers are split down.
Yep.
Just want to, for people at home, acknowledge that.
Oh, yep, sorry. There is, our existing column is off a bit.
Slid down.
It just slid down one, yeah. We did fix it, yeah. So
The SF here is supposed to be
Up
next
at the
to this
top.
number,
Yep.
so it's skewing the numbers a little bit.
Yep.
So apologize about that.
City Hall and Senior Center, again, the existing column is skewed a little bit. But again, we looked at the existing utilization. The building that is here today is 13,618, gross square foot. As we look at that increase, we really look at that public shared spaces as one of the increases. And then community development, I'm off here, sorry. Kind of our support spaces and building support spaces. So really our short-term change is election storage, and then we don't have many other changes until we get to that long-term, really when your city wants to grow, and we need to look at those new positions that currently don't fit in this facility today. And then Fire Station 3, talking about this station with the fire department and the chief, we know, like the other stations, there might be a model change for those. We don't foresee that for Station 3 in its location today, and so the thought is that we'll always stay kind of as that paid on call, but we do want to make sure we're accommodating for that decontamination, so the turnout gear space and maybe an extractor at this space, and that's really the changes at this facility.
Difference, the council person's question on the water storage decreasing is because the deputy vehicles were removed in that year and created a separate line item where they had been incorporated into the general water storage.
Oh, in the short term, yeah. All right, so as we looked at kind of our process, like I said, this was more of just an update of where we've been, the things that we've talked about with all the departments, the things that we saw when we went and toured all of your facilities, and really our next steps are moving into understanding solutions, looking at options, looking at maybe what those costs are, and definitely coming back and getting more feedback from our council. So with that, I guess I will see if there's any other questions or further clarifications we can provide for you.
I'm just wondering if you can send us all a copy of that, just because I can't read it from here. And then I would probably have more questions if I could actually read it, but what does that say?
I know on, when you went around the buildings and and looked at the caulking and everything else, did you look at the possibility of tuck pointing and that being done? Because I know there is cracks in like Station 1 and stuff. It's been tuck pointed before and it's probably due again. And then looking into the future on these block and brick buildings and stuff like that, seal coating. Typically, it's nice to do that every 5 years so you maintain the block so they don't absorb water and moisture.
Yes, we captured all of those items. It was kind of a highlight of some of the items, but yes, we
Okay.
captured the tuck pointing in there as well. So.
Yep. Anybody else got anything? So what's our next phase here?
Yeah, so if there's general, I would say, consensus with our council here of you guys understand the need, the things that we've talked about. I know there was a lot of information that was given to you, so we'll make sure you have those packets so you can look at all of the detail that was in there. But really our next step is, as long as there aren't major issues with what we're showing with you all, we will move forward. We'll continue to meet with our stakeholder group, start developing maybe some options, solutions, and that doesn't mean it's a singular one. It can be anywhere from a long-term 20-year growth, and it might be short-term, which would be minor things, out to where that long-term might be. Obviously, we want to evaluate what our options are based off of cost too, and making sure that we're aligning with maybe the debt service that you have coming off, and looking at how that kind of aligns with maybe our solutions and options as we move forward.
Can you, like, provide needs versus wants type of thing where things are really critical and really need our attention immediately? And then kind of separate it from future, what we can do? That'd be great. Thank you.
Right, because some of the items could be considered pretty luxury items and, you know, nice to have, but we need money. Let's find a way to get money without charging the taxpayers.
You know, Matt, I'd almost like to sit down with Nate to go through this with our own public works guys and see what they feel, what they think.
Good idea.
All right. I guess we got your direction of what we're looking for. You should have received the email last Friday from Matt. You were on the list.
For,
This,
with the packet in, I didn't see the packet in
yeah,
there. I
your
did
name's
read
on
the
here that
email.
it was delivered to you last Friday.
Yeah, I did get the email, but I opened it, but I didn't see a packet in there. I just
Okay.
saw the basic letter.
We can copy, I don't know if it's exactly this one, but we can certainly get you copies of this presentation.
Thank you.
And if the wording is still too small in there, just let us know. We can either right size it for you and make it a little bit larger, or print out some copies, or however you accommodate it. You know,
Thanks.
There's a lot on there.
All right, I thank you for your
Thank you for your time.
kindly
Thank you.
work on this, and we'll keep moving forward.
We have a little break until 7. Or we had a cutoff at 7.
That's right, hard stop.
Suzanne, I just forwarded to you.
Yeah, sure, her name was on the email.
Weird.
That was weird.
Says you got it now.
Yeah.
All right, well, you said there was just.
You're gonna, I know where you're going.
Just a word print in there?
I gotta go. You're out of here.
Is there an inside smoking area?
Smoking, if you got 'em.